Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting for January 20th. We're going to start out today with roll call taken by Julie Peterson. Present.
Judy Achterhoff.
In attendance.
Sean Anderson.
Present.
Scott Counter.
Present.
Dick Hesselink.
Present.
Ed Schochner.
Present.
Oh, I'm sorry. Great start. Okay. We'd like to approve the minutes. Does anybody have any questions or corrections, approval for the minutes? If none, we'll let them stand approved. We'll do public comment, and tonight public comment will be anything that's not on the agenda because we have 3 public hearings. I'd like people to keep their comments for the public hearings until the public hearings come up as a business item. Otherwise, we'll take public comments regarding anything else that's on the agenda or off the agenda. So I know this sounds confusing, but if you have a public comment regarding anything that's off the agenda or on the agenda, you're welcome to come up. All right. If you have a comment, anything that's not regarding the public hearings.
She has to leave early. You need to make an exception. Let her comment.
Of course. Yeah. And then we will move into the public hearings. The first is a waiver to setback, Town of Richmond, and Mike Wozniak will be giving a staff briefing.
Good afternoon, good evening, committee members and public that may be here for this item. I would note that we have with the setback reduction waiver, let me just advance to the report. We have a request for a road setback reduction waiver from Brian and Kristen Grunwald, and this property is located at 1440 146th Avenue in the town of Richmond, legally described as Lot 14, Richmond Meadows, again in the town of Richmond, in an R2 zone district. Included with the packet materials for the committee are the staff report, which I'm running through, and also the application submitted for this item. I'm not going to read through this verbatim, but just highlight the committee deals with from time to time these setback reduction waivers. The reason for this is that the land divisions that were processed under the subdivision ordinance prior to January 1st, 2006 were required to have a 100-foot structure setback from the road right-of-way drawn on the approved map of record. And you know, this would either be a certified survey map or plat, and that requirement changed again in 2006, and the county zoning went to a 50-foot setback requirement from road right-of-way. And in order to have an exception or a waiver from the 100-foot requirement that's shown on some of the CSMs and plats for these older land divisions, there's a kind of a couple-step process, and one is to seek a setback waiver through the committee, which we're doing now, and the other step involved is a correction instrument has to be prepared by a registered land surveyor and filed on the property. And so to get on with this, this applicant's request under the provisions of the land division ordinance, essentially they're asking for a waiver for that structure setback from the right-of-way from 100 feet to 50 feet. They don't actually need the full 50 feet in this instance, but often with these, if there's any further changes or slight adjustment by granting the waiver to the full 50 feet, that allows some flexibility going forward with these, and it also matches up with the current ordinance standard. Just a quick aerial view of the site, and I'll note on here that the property in question and the blue line on here indicates the 100-foot, roughly the 100-foot structure setback to where the existing property was sited, and noting that the structure on the neighboring property to the east is at the 100-foot setback as well. Another close-up view here indicates a little layout of where they're wanting to construct a garage structure, and again, it would essentially encroach roughly 13 feet into the 100-foot currently required 100-foot setback area. There's a little more detailed sketch with a few different lines drawn on here, but the proposed garage is highlighted in red on this one, and the 100-foot line, setback line from 87th Avenue with the blue line, and there's a septic tank location noted, and where the 50-foot setback from right-of-way would be in green, and the edge of the proposed structure, I think, is probably highlighted roughly by this orange line. And I'll note that the town of Richmond did consider this, and they recommended the approval of the 13-foot reduction. I suspect they recommended approval of what the Grunwalds asked for, and so that's the direction we've gotten from the town. Again, noted on this slide as under agency review. When we're considering standards for these setback waivers, we have some issues we consider. Essentially, it can only be changed by correction instrument, again, prepared by a Wisconsin registered land surveyor, and it's supposed to be allowed in unusual circumstance where a reduction of the setback will allow the lot or structure or structures on the lot to be in greater compliance with the objectives and standards of the ordinance in Chapter 15, and would not negatively affect the layout, design, continuity, or aesthetics of the neighborhood. And in this instance, I'll run through some findings. Generally, I would say we're not seeing that what the Grunwalds want to do would in any way negatively affect the neighborhood. The reduced setback would allow the lot or structures on the lot to be in greater compliance with the objectives and standards of Chapter 15. If it was a subdivision being done today, the standard would be 50 feet. Due to the curvilinear roadway, the location of the existing septic tank, and a reduction to the structure setback would not negatively impact the layout, design, again, continuity and or aesthetics of the neighborhood, neighborhood. The reduced structure setback will allow the proposed structure to be located on an appropriate portion of the lot from the driveway access and topographic standpoint. Now, the town of Richmond has provided the recommendation, as I've indicated, and reducing the structure setback to the county standard of 50 feet from the right-of-way from 146 would not negatively impact the layout, design, continuity, or again, the aesthetics of the neighborhood access location, and will eliminate the need to track a revised setback in any future request for a setback reduction for the property owners, present or future. Staff recommendation on this item is that the Community Development Committee approve this setback reduction to 50 feet from the road right-of-way based on staff findings 1 through 5 with the following condition. Again, that a Wisconsin registered land surveyor must record with the Register of Deeds office a correction instrument to reduce the setback as per section 13.10B1 of the Land Division Ordinance. I do have the application that was submitted available if there's any questions regarding the application. And I'll note that Brian Grunwald is here, and if you have any questions from Mr. Grunwald, he's available to answer them, as well as staff. Thank you.
Continuing on, what I'd like to ask for, if anybody in the public would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this waiver to the setback. Does anybody from the county board have a question either for Mike or for Mr. Grunwald? All right. Those being the case, I'm going to end this public hearing and move on to business item number 1, and would entertain a motion.
So move.
All right, we have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Very good. It's been moved and seconded. Any conversation, any comments?
I would maybe like to have a reason why we're doing it, and I'd like to add it to that motion based on the 5 findings of the staff. That's why we're doing it.
Very good, based on the findings and the staff recommendation. That's good. No further comments. Put her to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Passes unanimously. Moving forward. We'll go back to public hearings. But before I do, one thing. I was told that former county board member, and I don't want to embarrass you, Jill, but I was told that you may want to speak earlier because you have another commitment. Are you interested in speaking, say your piece now? I'd be happy to change the order a little bit and invite you up to the podium. That would be great. Jill Berkey. It's my meeting.
Okay, thank you. It's good to see many familiar faces this evening. And I am speaking with respect to the Eckerd Bluffland project. All right. I attended the open house for the Eckerd Blufflands Park project on January 11th and was happy to see the progress and scope of the project since the land was purchased in 2014. As a former member of the Community Development Committee at that time, it is exciting to see the significant steps toward the creation of a new park north of our historic county seat and high population center that features spectacular bluffs, open space, and shoreland on the treasured St. Croix River. This natural wonder, if adopted by the county board and by the committee sitting, will open opportunities for residents and visitors, young and old, to find a sanctuary for exploration and preservation of a very special ecosystem. A couple of points I want to have you consider. Number one, I support the use of the Eckerd cabin to be used for educational purposes and ask that it include both short-term retreat events and, secondly, day programs for nonprofit organizations, including schools, 4-H, scouts, art organizations, and organizations with a nature and ecology emphasis. This might incorporate the help of volunteers from the county to help manage the activities and develop a working relationship with the county staff. And then secondly, I would caution that public hunting, specifically gun or bow, not be allowed on the public land unless there is a very clear demarcation of boundaries, clearly signed and away from all residences or other active park-related activities. I'm a dog lover. I live on a farm on 40 acres. Family dogs may wander from residences and should not be unintended targets for those on the hunt for wild game. Glover Park in the town of Troy, which I am a member and serve as the board chair under the township board, featuring wooded trails, open spaces for ballparks, pickleball, playground, and picnic activities, was formally opened during hunting season, but eventually closed to hunting as the use of the park increased and the residential areas around the park were developed, and it's changed very significantly over the 28 years that I've been involved in the park board in Troy. It was a necessary measure, not popular by all, to prohibit hunting in the public park to ensure the safety of all. So I would simply ask that the county consider that continued growth may happen not only on the north boundary, but in the areas east of Highway 35 in the future, to be cognizant that the status of gun and bow hunting as it relates to families who live near, including wandering pets, not be a incompatible activity down the road. In closing, keep up the good work, and I look forward to hearing about opportunities for funding to develop this county treasure. Thank you to many staff members for their dedication and countless sacrifice of time and energy to move the Eckerd Blufflands project along, including the Richards property, for consideration by this committee and eventually referral to the county board. And thank you also to the Community Development Committee for supporting and also moving the project along, as you will consider later this evening. I am hopeful and anticipate that the new county park will get full county board approval in the near future. I appreciate your time. Jill Berkey, Town of Troy.
Thank you, Jill. It's good to see you. And by way of explanation, it was my fault. Jill got a mixed message not to speak about this during regular public comment, and that embarrassment is entirely my fault. So thank you for your indulgence. Moving forward, we'll go into the second public hearing, which is an ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning to rezone approximately 67.76 acres in Star Prairie, I believe. So John Hilgers will explain all that to us.
Good afternoon, committee members and Mr. Chair. The second hearing tonight is for rezoning in the town of Star Prairie. Specifically, the application is from the Engstrom Land Company and the Engstrom Joint Living Trust. The request is to rezone 69.76 acres from R1 residential to R2 residential. And a little bit of background on the request. Prior to 2019, the applicant was in the process of a subdivision under the prior rural residential zoning. And prior to 2019, the rural residential zoning pretty much allowed residential of all densities. As part of the county's comprehensive zoning revision in 2019 that was adopted, the town adopted a zoning map that placed this property in R1 instead of R2. And a little bit of a difference, the R1 allows residential density at 1 unit per 10 acres of density. The R2 district allows 2 acre and 3 acre lots with unlimited density requirements. So again, the applicant was on the right course prior to 2019. The town adopted changes in 2019 that changed the parcel to R1 when it should have been changed to R2. So the applicant is back here making that correction to an R2 zoning, which does require a public hearing. A little bit of background on the request. The location map shows the parcel just north of the 4-lane Highway 64 between the village of Somerset and the city of New Richmond, and the property is just west of 100th Street in the town of Star Prairie. An aerial photo of the property shows one existing homestead on the site. The rest of the parcel is primarily ag-related type of uses with some closed depressions on the property. Not that the committee is making any recommendation on the plat tonight. It's strictly for rezoning, but we did include a proposed plat map to indicate to you what the applicant's intention is. It would be a plat for 8 lots, ranging in size from 3 acres to 10 acres. One of the 8 lots would be the existing homestead with access off of 100th Street. Just some general features of the property to show what's going on in the surrounding areas. As I mentioned, the cream-colored area is a subject property within the blue line, which is currently zoned R1. Properties just to the north and east of that parcel are currently zoned R2 and would support a little bit higher residential zoning. One of the key features that we as staff look at when we review these requests is how they are compliant with the comprehensive plan of the town and the county. And under state statute 66-1001-3G, amended rezoning of lands are required to be consistent with the local comprehensive plan. So one of the items within a comprehensive plan is what they call the future land use plan. And the future land use plan just takes a look at projecting and anticipated land uses in a general category. So for instance, the town of Star Prairie future land use map, the current one in effect, designates this area as mixed rural conservation design residential. It's this, by the end of this orange arrow right here. And basically the statement is that it would support smaller lot residential development and would encourage conservation design to preserve open space and rural character. The development should not negatively impact prime farmland. And then the county also has a future land use plan that designates this parcel as mixed rural residential, noted by the arrow here. And the primary intent of the mixed rural residential is to identify areas suitable for residential development. The designation can also include farmland, scattered open lands, woodlots, ag-related uses, cottage industries, mineral extraction operations, and single-family development. We then go on to say in our comprehensive plan the different districts that would be supported by this designation. And as you see, R2 would be supported by the county designation of this parcel. Taking a look at some of the natural resources on the property, the parcel does not contain any remnant sites of prairies or sensitive areas for wildlife. The property does have some environmental corridor designations to again notate the closed depressions on the property. And then we also allocate environmental corridors that connect wooded areas. So for example, on the property to the west of this site, there's a significant stand of pine trees. And then as you get further to the east, there's some wooded areas here, and we just mark those as connected corridors. Again, one of the limitations on the site, we do not have any shoreland, wetland, or floodplain areas on the property. Again, as mentioned earlier, we have a closed depression, 2 minor closed depressions, and those are identified on the map, and they're also regulated by Chapter 13 of the Land Division. So when the applicant goes through the land division process, they will have to be mindful of the depressions and comply with the ordinances that dictate land division requirements. In terms of productive farmland and gravel deposits, we also take a look at some of the other natural features. The central portion of the site is designated as productive farmland, more by soil class types than anything. And then you see the remainder of the site with some slope areas, but also areas that would be suitable for some possible gravel and sand deposits. The town of Star Prairie did review the request of the applicant, and the town of Star Prairie did recommend approval of the rezoning request at their January 4th town board meeting. And then as staff, we just reference a number of technical review findings. I won't go into detail here, but we reference making sure that we keep our county ordinances up to date. We did that as part of the 2019 update. Also taking a look at that, making sure the county land and water resource management plan is complied with. And then also as development moves forward, we have a number of different chapters in our zoning and different codes that talk about sanitary systems, land division, and zoning provisions that must be complied with. And then the different criteria that the committee should use to recommend approval, making sure that the rezoning is consistent with the St. Croix County Comp Plan, the Natural Resource Management Plan, and the zoning ordinance and all other applicable codes I just talked about, that the town has not disapproved the rezoning request, and that the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with surrounding zoning districts and does not result in spot zoning. So the committee action tonight, you can recommend approval of the amendment, recommend disapproval of the amendment, or table the zoning amendment for additional information if necessary. And then to conclude, the staff recommendation would be to recommend approval of the rezoning request based on the technical findings above, based on the fact that the request is consistent with the town of Star Prairie and St. Croix County Comprehensive Future Land Use Maps, that the town board has recommended approval, and that the proposed use is consistent with and can comply with standards in Chapter 15 zoning. And that concludes the staff summary.
Thank you, John. Does the committee have any questions for John? Scott?
John, when I was doing a review on this, if you can bring up the aerial view. There, thank you. Right in the very center there, and there's a, dark green. There looked like there was a red roofed structure, and wondering if, what kind of, I didn't really go out to investigate or anything. What kind of structure is that? And it was more so, is this cabin type structure, or is this just a storage building?
I'm not sure, is the applicant here tonight? Would you want to answer that? At the podium, thank you.
Hello, my name is John Eastrom and the proposed applicant. That is a shed an Amish built shed that is on pylons. And we do use it both as storage, and then we go out and have fires. We ride horses. I board horses out there, and so we do that. It is not used as a cabin, but so we do store some things in that, but it's not used as a primary residence or anything like that.
Sure. Right.
With that, for that type of use, then what I would make, I guess the question is, then you don't have any septic or well or anything like that out there. It's just strictly used.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and that was evident in the staff report, just to make clear there's, oh, yeah, that's all covered. Pretty, carefully covered. Anybody, and thank you, Mr. Engstrom. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? As long as you're at the podium.
Yeah,
Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think the staff has done a very good job. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, thanks for coming.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of or opposed to this rezoning? That being the case, I'll close the public hearing and move on to business item number 2 and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to rezone, to recommend rezoning, because I believe this has to go to the county board. Recommend rezoning the Engstrom Land Company from R1 to R2 because it meets all the applicable statutes and criteria.
Scott Counter seconds.
Second it.
Any further conversation? That being the case, call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move on to business item number 3, or public hearing number 3, resolution to include the Eckerd Blufflands Park Master Plan as a section within the St. Croix County Outdoor Recreation Plan. And John Hilders will give us a presentation.
Good evening again. The third hearing tonight is related to the Eckerd Blufflands Park Master Plan. The purpose of the public hearing tonight is to amend the outdoor recreation plan. And in order to amend the recreation plan, we will be asking the committee to recommend approval of the Eckerd Blufflands Master Plan. That master plan document would then be an appendix to the outdoor recreation plan. So because we're amending the larger plan, that is what's triggering the public hearing tonight. Just to recap what's in your packet and what was online on the agenda packet, and then we also had a project webpage that provided the following information: the park master plan map, the appendix to the master plan, a PowerPoint presentation, and then the summary of comments that we received as of lunchtime yesterday. So since lunchtime yesterday, I just want to have your attention go to the packet that was provided at your seat before the meeting. So between yesterday at lunch and before tonight's hearing, we received an additional 64 comments. We summarized the comments on the cover page. And just for people's benefit, 2 of the comments were to build the park. 2 of the comments were trespassing concerns and comments. 9 of the comments was do not develop, keep for hunting. And then 51 of the comments were build the park to include a disc golf course. So we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of it. I guess it's up to the committee if you want to take a little bit time later to go through these. That'll be up to you. So again, public hearing, we had a 30-day advertisement requirement for this. Again, we had the project webpage set up. We also conducted a public open house last Tuesday here in the boardroom. We had approximately 50 people or so that attended, and it was some good questions, good discussion. Hopefully we were able to help answer some questions. And then on the cover page, we had 30 comments up until yesterday. We just categorized and summarized them for your convenience below. So we'll get into a little bit of the background of the park. So again, the location perspective shows the Eckerd Blufflands County Park between State Highway 35 running north-south and between the scenic Syncroy Riverway. The park is within 2 jurisdictions. The southern lobe is within the town of Hudson. The northern 2/3 of the park is within the town of St. Joseph. You see the village of North Hudson to the south, the city of Hudson, and then the city of Stillwater on the other side of the river, and then the proximity to Willow River State Park. A little bit of why we're here at this point in time. So a little bit of the impetus and support for the master park plan preparation. Again, the outdoor rec plan we just mentioned earlier is a guiding document that's updated every 5 years. So in 2019, when the plan was updated, it did talk about beginning the process of master planning for the Richards Eckerd properties, which is now known as Eckerd Blufflands Park. And then some other references. The county board revisited some of the St. Croix County strategic plan initiatives. There were a number of initiatives that were identified by the county board within this document. One of those initiatives was to improve and develop county parks and trails, with a series of objectives below that talk about camping accommodations, improving accessibility to our county natural resources and recreation, and then exploring physical and educational activities. So that was kind of the impetus for us moving forward on the master planning process. To get a little bit of perspective with this park, again, the Eckerd Bluffland Park is shown in this lime green area just on the middle of the map here. And we wanted to take a look at the population based on 2020 census data in terms of proximity of residents to the park property. And so about 80% of the county population, the current population is 93,536. 74,000 people are living within 15 miles of the park. And again, that's just the county side. Again, we wanted to show the number of residents within proximity to the park property. So again, the population in St. Croix County is very weighted to the west side of the county. We also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the current trail efforts that are underway and how that relates to the Eckerd Bluffland Park property. So as you see here, we have a larger map in green that shows existing trails and sidewalks that actually starts in Afton on the Minnesota side, crosses the St. Croix, comes up through Hudson, downtown Hudson, through either sidewalks or bike lanes. And then as you get into North Hudson, the Phase 1 trail that's shown on your map is a funded project jointly by DOT and the St. Croix County Board of Commissioners. That Phase 1 is in the design stage with anticipated construction to begin sometime late next year. It's a 1.1 mile segment from Summer Street north to North Hudson, about by the Quick Trip in North Hudson. And then it would be an off-road 10-foot wide bituminous trail on the east side of the right-of-way to Old County 35. Phase 2 of this trail project was just applied for by the county through DOT. We hope to hear on the results of that application by this summer, but Phase 2 would go 1.23 miles to County V. And then there'd be on-road trail striping from County V to the entrance of Willow River State Park on Rural Route 13. And when I say entrance, there is a comprehensive construction project underway for some mountain bike trails and some regular bike trails within Willow River State Park that would then connect these trail facilities into Willow River. And then the ultimate big picture, the larger phase then would take Phase 3 from County V up to the Loop Trailhead. And of course from here you'd be able to go across the new bridge into Stillwater or across the old historic lift bridge through downtown, hit the Browns Creek State Trail, which essentially connects you to the regional trail system of the Twin Cities. So we think a lot of positive things going on in this part of the county, and we think the Eckerd Blufflands Park project will complement that. So getting into the details of the park property a little bit, there's 3 properties that make up the Eckerd Bluffland Park. The 2015 Richards property was acquired, 2015, the 50 acres. The Eckerd property purchased in 2018. And then the 2020 acquisition was the Zappa parcel, a 2-acre piece on the southern lobe of the park. So in total, there's 170 acres, 2,800 feet of shoreline along the scenic St. Croix located in the 2 towns described earlier. And of course, some of the distinct features you see on the pictures here, a large ravine system. We have an open grassland that we would like to see restored to some of the original prairie and oak habitat back from a century ago. And then of course, the Riverway shoreline area. So in early 2020, we engaged the assistance of Pleasanton Kogler Group. It was a park planning group that helped us prepare some of the outreach with this project. And of course, with COVID, we had to be a little bit creative in how we did the outreach. So it was a very multifaceted approach. Obviously, we took advantage of our county newspapers, our Facebook page, the St. Croix County website. And then we also established a project webpage specific to the master plan process. And to get this started, we sent an informational flyer. We actually mailed a flyer to all landowners within 3/4 mile of the park. So we sent out about 600 mailings, county board, all the government jurisdictions in the county, villages, towns, cities, DOT, DNR, River Association. We also had a lot of local clubs, local bicycle clubs, bird clubs, and of course the County Sportsmen's Alliance were all engaged. We sent out a brief questionnaire asking people preferences, ideas for the park. And again, we summarize that here. We also met with some of the stakeholders, what we call stakeholders, so some of the natural resource groups, the DNR, some of the birding groups, the Sportsmen's Alliance. We had a stakeholder meeting regarding local government and utilities, so we had the co-op, Excel, I believe the town of St. Joe was in attendance at that meeting. And then we also had a couple discussions with adjacent landowners who would have interest, obviously, in what happened with the park. We did the online survey that we sent out, as I mentioned. And we got a very good response. We had 647 responses that really helped shape the backbone of some of the initial feedback of the plan. And we spent about 3 months in 2020 collecting that documentation. We also had an online interactive map that people could place comments on, and we had 35 people choose to do that. What did the survey tell us? It told us that passive recreation was very much a priority. So you see in the left-hand column, 90% favored hiking trails, 80% scenic vistas, picnic areas, shoreline exploration, winter activities, and then the regional bike and trail connection that we just talked about. We asked a more prying question that asked, when you factor in a required park entry fee, what would be the most desired facilities? Again, hiking was the top one. Water access was stairs or trail from the Bluff area down to the river. Camping came up as the third highest, and then winter hiking and snowshoeing. So from this, we created a number of different concept plans. We took that information and we put together 3 different concepts. The one important thing we had to keep in mind as part of this process was some of the park program requirements. So because of some of the grant funding the county received to purchase some of this property from the DNR, there are certain program elements that have to be left in the park for now. Those would be hiking, cross-country skiing, fishing, bow and rifle hunting, and trapping. So we kind of get back to the comments we received on the hunting issues and things like that. Some of that, or much of that, is driven by the grant requirements that we have in place from the money we received to purchase the property. So 3 concepts were created. The concept on the left featured the most camping options. Concept 2 featured the most adventure recreation options. We did some proposed zip line ideas. We just floated some different things out there. And then concept 3 had the most hiking options. So again, we went through a phase 2 of public input. We put these 3 concepts on our project webpage to solicit comments. Again, we sent out a master email list. We had people join a master email list from the phase 1. If people were interested in future updates, please leave their email. We had almost 300 email addresses that we were able to communicate with as part of phase 2. And obviously we did our Facebook and, county website and project webpage. So some of the phase 2 public engagement findings we came up with. We asked people which concepts you preferred, which ones you liked the best, which ones you didn't like. And about a third of the people that responded to the survey preferred a mix of the concepts. And again, concept 1, camping, came in at 15%. Concept 2 was the adventure, 25%. And then concept 3 was the hiking, So again, we created a story map on our webpage. People were able to comment. One of the things we learned early on in this park planning project was the challenge of access. So early on, as we were getting some of the public outreach, even before that, we had consulted with DOT, the county highway commissioner. We also consulted with our park planning people, and we were determined that the park would need a new access. Right now, if you went to the property, you access park through Old County 35, Highway 35, which has some very challenging access points at this location and at this location. We have some grade issues, and we also have site visibility issues. If you're coming out and trying to turn onto Highway 35, it's very challenging. So we took a look at this in terms of trying to produce some options of a safe and efficient access. And through collaboration with DOT, our highway commissioner, our park planning people, we determined that the access point at this location would be the safest and most efficient. As part of this, we would need to vacate Old Highway 35 in this location here. We did have some conversations with the town of St. Joseph on that, and they do support a safer access at that location. By doing this, we would bisect Old 35, and so Old 35 would be cul-de-saced at this location, so there would be no throughway along Old 35 anymore. The new access point would be an 18-foot wide bituminous drive with 2-foot gravel shoulders on each side of the drive. So this would access the entry station at this location, which is set back far enough off of 35 to allow for stacking during the busy seasons for vehicle stacking. And then we would have 2 branches. One of the drives would go off into what we would call the activity area. This would be the primary parking lot area. We would have bathrooms, picnic pavilions, and then a series of different playgrounds. The other access drive would continue further into the park and access the in-holding properties, along with some of the other properties in holdings further south. And then they would also access future camping areas. As part of this, we would need to reconstruct River Heights Trail. Right now, River Heights Trail follows this alignment, and then in red to Old 35. The proposal would be to eliminate this section marked in red. We do not want park traffic going on to Old 35. It's not built for it, and again, it's just not safe sight distance when you're pulling out at that location. So River Heights Trail will be rerouted again to follow this route and come out at the new access point. This is just a different version. So again, the left-hand side of the picture would be north. We just kind of flipped the picture for you. Again, this would be the cul-de-sac that would be created once Old 35 is stubbed at this location to make room for the new access. We did spend some money to get 15% of the engineering done, so this is a partial engineering drawing. But this shows the future bypass lanes that would be required, both the right turn lane, and then we would have a bypass lane going north on 35. And then the purple markings would show the trail alignments that I discussed earlier and the trail access into the park. So as part of the draft plan, we included a number of features. Just looking at the pictures, the left-hand column, we have some of the camping features, a camper cabin, yurt, some of the hike-in sites that are going to be shown on the north side of the park, as well as some of the picnic pavilions. Some of the more active uses will have an interactive play area, the playground, rock climbing, ropes course. We do have a small mountain bike course we're proposing. I'll touch on that a little bit later. Sledding Hill, stargazing, and trail access. So we're going to divide the park into 3 for ease of conversation and just highlight a little bit about what each section of the park is proposed to offer. So the first slide would be the north piece or the Richards piece. And just to get your bearings straight, this common parking area I showed you earlier is at this location here. So this phase of the project would provide some hike-in trails that you see outlined in brown. All these dots that you see here would be individual hike-in sites. We also have a series of overlooks, as these trails will also be used by hikers. Anything that you see in brown would be gravel or crusher fine trail. When we get into some of the other maps, you'll see a white line for the trail that indicates that that would be a bituminous trail that could be used for hiking or biking. The other thing that we heard a lot of very early was concern about trespass, boundary issues. Granted, this is a master plan. We are not in the design stage yet. Those details will come later, but we do indicate that, yes, we will need to do some signage along the boundaries. It might be hard to read for you, but where the park abuts private property, we do show a faint white line which would indicate a fence that would go roughly from the water line up into the property about 50 to 100 feet. That would just more help delineate private from public. We do have one of the stairways that would go down to a shoreline fishing area, waiting area in this location. And then the trail that would go back to the parking area. This orange line you see on the very east edge of the property is the existing Xcel Energy transmission line. That is there to stay, and as part of this project, nothing is proposed to change with that. So next we go to the central, what we call the central Bluffland area. Again, we talked a little bit about the new access point at this location. Next to the entry station, we will have a maintenance building, of course, for our maintenance vehicles, equipment, and things that are necessary to maintain the park. We do have a sledding hill proposed at the location where this road would be vacated. There's about a 30-foot drop over about a 250-foot area. That makes for a nice gradual sledding hill at that location once this road is removed. We do have a mountain bike course we are proposing, and that somewhat had to do with a little bit about what Willow River State Park was doing and our connection to the regional trail network we talked about. You know, you could learn if you were a youngster or somebody just beginning. We'd have a wooden mountain bike course you could take advantage of, and then hit the trails and head out to the trail system on Highway 35 or to Willow River State Park. As you get into the parking area, the main parking lot will have about 175 parking stalls, and we are planning on adding at least 1 or 2 stalls for buses. We also have individual parking lots that you'll see scattered around the site for people that may want to use specifically the bike course or the sledding hill, depending on the season. Here you begin to see the white trail markations. That would be a blacktop trail that again would connect to the overlook and the hike-in sites to the north. A series of playgrounds and a series of picnic shelters ranging in size from small to large depending on the size of your party. And this location here would be the Oak Savannah trail restoration, or I'm sorry, Oak Savannah restoration. We would be looking at reseeding some of this, replanting some of this. You also note that there is some additional landscaping that would be proposed along the in-holding properties, and of course maintain the existing vegetation on the north side. To give you an idea of setbacks and active areas to structures and households, the distance from this northerly in-holding property to the playground area is about 2 football fields, about 600 feet, give or take. And then with the buffer areas, it's a pretty good distance. And then of course at the parking lot area, we will have flush restrooms closer to the picnic areas. And again, this orange line is just the Xcel transmission line coming into the property off of Old 35. Next, we'll go to the South Blufflands and touch on that briefly. So this South Blufflands property portion of the park would facilitate, at this point, we're proposing 17 different camper cabins with 7 yurts. The camper cabins are about 350 square feet in size, very small. No plumbing, but it would have electricity. These cabins are very similar to the ones that were installed in Glen Hills Park recently. Again, the road coming in, we have some separate parking facilities, smaller parking lots, depending on what cabins you'd be using. We also have a series of hiking trails that would take advantage of the ravine system by virtue of some swinging bridges that you see in this picture here. It's just an example to take advantage of the landscape. And again, the in-holding properties that would follow the existing easement and the upgraded drive. Eckerd cabin in this location, the existing Eckerd cabin. Again, you heard a comment earlier. I think that's still an open issue, we kind of left the door open as to what kind of uses could go in there, so we're not really locked in to anything at this time. That would be more of a programming element when we get further along. We have an open play area with shelter in this location. And again, we would provide and maintain access into the in-holdings at this location right here. It would be a turn into these properties. One more set of stargazing mounds. Over here, the other one was closer to the Sledding Hill. This next slide just summarizes some of the highlights of the park. So in total, we'd be looking at 13 hike-in tent sites on the north, 17 camper cabins, and 7 yurts on the south side of the park. That would provide 37 camping opportunities. In terms of trails, if you wanted to go out there and get a nice workout in, whether you're jogging or walking, we have a total of about 5.2 miles of paved trails and natural surface trails, 4 swinging bridges, as I just discussed, and 2 different sets of stairways. The other stairway, would be just below the Eckerd cabin at this location right here. And again, they would be leading down to a waiting area that would be buoyed off. We would not promote swimming in this area. We do not anticipate lifeguarding this area. But again, that would be a programming element we'd get into in the design phase. The other thing I just want to point out that 2 of the camper cabins will be ADA accessible. I think that's important to point out. And again, some of the highlights of the park development. It's important to also acknowledge that with this size of a property will come some challenges. Our biologists that we hired noted a tremendous amount of invasive species that will require management plans. We'll also need to address some areas of the ravines that are seeing a little bit of erosion, but not too bad at this point. And so the plan would promote annual site assessments to identify issues that we would need immediate attention, vegetation monitoring and inspections for invasive weed encroachment. What we'd propose is a $25,000 annual budget for 10 years just to get started and get those issues under control. By adopting this plan, the county would be eligible for grants to help with some of these efforts. So that's another reason to adopt the plan, even if, depending on when development would happen, we could still get started on some of these other issues. So we could utilize county funds, grants, and even volunteer groups. I won't go into detail here. These are just different maps that show which invasive species are where. But if you look at the top middle, buckthorn is probably going to be the biggest challenge, being able to get that under control and maintain that. But you see the different versions of the different invasive species here. With the help of our consultant, we did put together a recommended phasing plan. The short-term one would provide the most impact to the park development. So the short-term improvements would be all the paved drives, the Highway 35 access, the entry station, the parking lot, the playground, picnic facilities, the river overlook, the Oak Savannah trail loop, and then the camper cabins and yurts, and then the parking areas at the southern portion of the site. This would be the biggest price tag, and that would be at an estimated $10.4 million. And that's using 2021 construction estimates that we got last year. The midterm improvements, or phase 2, is what we would call it, would be the adventure area, the climbing ropes course, anything in this kind of lighter shade here, the mountain bike course, the swinging bridge trail through the south portion of the park, and bluff stairway access to the Syncroy River. These improvements would cost approximately $1.25 million. And then phase 3, the long-term improvements, would be the hike-in sites on the north side of the park, trail construction, one of the overlooks, or 2 overlooks, along with a picnic shelter in the northern part of the park, and this would come in at $1.12 million. And lastly, we just conclude by putting together some potential development and operational funding sources. On the development side of the ledger, on the left side, we talk about capital improvement programming, which is done through the county board budgeting process, Syncroy County Bonding Authority, voter referendum, if the county wants to get a pulse from the voters. We're also going to entertain the possibility of sponsorship of specific park improvements, like if a business or entity wanted to sponsor a playground or a portion of a trail. We're certainly going to consider that. The DNR has some limited funding for development items through their stewardship program. Individual donations, I believe we received one donation, I can't remember the amount, $340,000 roughly. And then from an operational perspective, of course, the big ones will be the entrance fees, the camping fees, and the cabin rentals. And I will stop there for now.
Thank you very much, John. I think what I'd like to do is ask the committee to hold their questions until we get into the business item, and we'll turn to the public at this point and ask for the public's comments and questions of the staff. So, if anybody from the public, is that right?
Yep, and ask if they sign.
Right, and before you speak, I'd like to make sure that people have signed up on the sign-up sheet for public comments during the public hearing. So if anybody from the public would like to speak to the park at this point, either for or against, I'd invite you to the podium if you've signed up and have your say. And please say your name and where you live to introduce yourself. And we're asking that you kind of limit your talk to 2 minutes, although we'll be flexible with that too.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'll do my best, I promise. But my name is Michael Gibbons. I live at 233 River Heights Trail. I can show you on the map, but I'm one of the fortunate 4 that lives directly in the middle of the park there. I am the southernmost neighbor. 2 other neighbors are here this evening as well that live in the 4 home sites there in the middle. And as Mr. Hilger said, it is understood that this isn't the final design, and I guess the operations haven't been addressed yet, but as neighbors, we would like to get some of these things out in the open for the rest of the board to hear. Initially when this was presented to all of us and the acquisition was made, it was kind of for the preservation of the river valley and preservation of the lands. And quite frankly, I think some of the highlights of some of the things that are proposed is pretty heavy development at this point, particularly with the camping. After you look at some of the survey responses, camping was pretty low on the list of items that people wanted: hiking, trails, whatnot. And as neighbors, we were all okay with that because it was a lower impact to us and the surrounding area around us. But having 37 campsites out there, we feel is a pretty heavy property value degradation to the 6 of us that are directly inside the park, along with some of the stakeholders around the exterior of the park as well. We've spoken to appraisers, assessors, and they said they would have a very difficult time making an argument that this adds value to any of our properties being directly inside of the park, and none of them could, quite frankly, come up with examples of a situation where people are living directly inside a park, whether it be a county or a state park. We also have deeded access back to our homes across River Heights Trail. That issue still needs to be addressed. If the county will be updating our deeds, how all this operation will work through the park gate, the pass-around lane, Some of us have boats and campers. Will we still be able to get those back to our properties, traversing through the park and the gates? I apologize, I'm trying to summarize here, but some of the general operations of the park as well, we're struggling to get an understanding of, mail, deliveries, visitors, some of the things that how this would operate. Does everyone just pass by the gate? Do you stop? Do you check in? Does everyone get a pass that's coming back there? How does that work? Hunting is a very big issue. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. The hunting this fall was significantly increased from prior year. And the one time we were able to get JR out there, who has been fantastic, by the way, when he's been able to get out there, he confiscated 7 tree stands that were illegally placed, along with a number of trail cams that were also placed. And another neighbor noticed a feed pile that was in the property. So we certainly would like and have requested multiple times more monitoring of this park. And we understand there certainly isn't a staff member assigned out there yet, but it's been a little bit of a mess up to this point, and we're very concerned what it's going to look like when there's potentially 1,100 people out there a day. If you read through the plan and what that looks like. We also have heard or understand that the park is open sun up to sundown. There's frequently vehicles parked out there in the designated parking spots right now after dark. We do understand that that's hunters coming out of the woods and whatnot, but if the park's closed with no one out there addressing some of these issues or patrolling it, whether it be the DNR or county staff, it makes it very difficult for us as homeowners, and we've been told by the St. Croix County Sheriff's Department multiple times that this is not their problem, this is the county's problem, county staff problem. We also are concerned with all of the overnight camping out there, what type of park staff would be available, how big is the park staff going to be, and again, these are questions that will come up in the operation, but if this plan gets adopted, it's obviously the plan that everyone's working towards making happen. So we would like to get some of these issues addressed. And the boundaries are also an issue as well, with myself being on the southern end. I don't think 50 feet of fence down on the beach is going to be enough to keep people from traversing at least our 4 properties in the middle between the 2 beach areas of the park. I think our request, at least on the north and the south side as homeowners, is that fence goes from the low water mark all the way out to the road to keep people from traversing our properties. I think that summarizes a list of our concerns at this point, but I will say Mr. Hilgers and Ms. Denzer have certainly made themselves available to questions and have been responsive when we've asked things, but we feel there just needs to be a better understanding as how more of these things are going to work if this plan gets adopted and starts to move forward, how it's going to affect our properties, the operations of it, our families, and our property values, quite frankly. So thank you for allowing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Would anybody else like to speak? Just step forward to the podium and introduce yourself. I have a comment that somebody asked me to read, which I'd be happy to, from James and Judith Green, 170 Starwood, Hudson, Wisconsin. Comment: we support the Eckerd Bluffland Park. We do not support hunting and trapping, as they are not compatible with the intent of this park as outlined in the proposed plan. On the DNR website, it stated that due to property size, proximity to urban or residential areas, environmental sensibility, and other factors, some state park properties do not allow hunting. That's end quote. Several parks are listed as not allowing hunting and trapping, such as Governor Nelson State Park, which is a refuge for wild and protected plants and natural habitat as well. It is further noted that this is a prairie and oak savanna, which is also true of Eckerd property, the Eckerd property. That was from James and Judith Green. So one more time, is there anybody else who would like to make comment during this public hearing? Please step up at the podium and introduce yourself.
I have not signed up for it.
Well, you can go ahead and sign up and then hit the podium. We'd be happy to wait for you to do that.
She'd like this read. We can't answer questions, but we can get back to her later.
No question.
Yeah, you can just read it. She asked for it to be read, and then tell her we'll get back to her later. So we don't think we have the answer. Oh, super neat.
Here, ma'am, the lady who just brought this up, I need your name.
My name is Jane Vega. I live on Highway 35, beginning at the Bardell property, which is the end of North Hudson, and running to what used to be the Hart property along 35 on the east side. And my concern is that several things. Police, fire, and emergency services were not mentioned tonight at all. 35 is a very busy highway. The development in the area has increased the traffic level. And at current times, there's been several accidents in the area that have been very unfortunate. And making that highway more a busier place, it concerns me because I live and watch the traffic all the time. So I would like to hear more about the police, the fire, and emergency services that will be upgraded in that area, also the speed limit. I have some beautiful white pine trees along the east side of the highway, and my property runs for a long extension along the east side of the property. I see that the park is preserving the lands and the forestation. I would also like my property to have that same respect. Trees, vegetation, preserved for my enjoyment as well as for people along the bike path. I would be impacted through the bike path from the Quick Trip in North Hudson up to Old Highway 35. The entire length of my property would be impacted. And then my last concern is just the traffic level on Highway 35, the speed limit, and the increase in public use of Highway 35. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. You must have practiced that. You came in at exactly 2 minutes. Thank you. All right. Ms. Gardner, Courtney had asked me to read her comment, and it's in the form of a question, so we'll have to get back to you. It is, what percentage of the park will be developed and be left native, and what percentage will be undeveloped? And we will come back to you with an answer. Thank you. Her address is 1089 Old Highway 35. Courtney Gardner. Gardner. Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely, Mrs. Gibbons. Yep, if we have one more, if you're signed up, please step up to the podium and introduce yourself.
I'm Alice Teedy, 184 Starwood, Hudson, and like many people that we've heard about tonight, my husband and I are concerned about the hunting and trapping situation. We're wondering why, since Willow River State Park is so close with great acreage for hunting and trapping, which is allowed, why must it be? I understand that the landowners required it, but is there a chance that as the usage of this park increases, non-hunting usage, that this requirement could be changed? It just seems that it's going to be very congested eventually if hunting and trapping are continued to be going on. So I'm not anti-hunting by any means. Don't misunderstand. It just seems that for a relatively small acreage that it's kind of likely to be a problem. So that's it for us.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Linda Gibbons. I'm at 229 River Heights Trail, the second house in. I have a lot of concerns about this, mainly safety, only because I've talked to St. Croix County Sheriff's Department several times over what's happened out there with hunting over the last 3 years, and it's been just a free-for-all. There's been no respect to our properties. When I call St. Croix County Sheriff, they say, "This, you call the DNR, this isn't our deal." There's people out there with guns. I've got 2 grandchildren that live right next door, 3 and 5. They're out there in the dead of night. It is dark, and their cars are still parked there. They're still in the woods. I had to drive into the field one day to get around them while they were loading a carcass into their car in the middle of River Heights Trail, which is the road that's deeded to us to get back to our homes. So they've treated us like we're second-class citizens already, and I have some real concerns about what camping is going to look like out there if they don't respect us as homeowners. We pay an awful lot in taxes out there between the 6 of us. We pay an awful lot of taxes, and our rights need to be respected as well. And we haven't gotten a lot of support out of the park system so far since Eckerds have sold the property. And when I reach out for help from our community, like fire, police was mentioned previous to this, they kind of toss their hands in the air at us and say, "Well, this isn't our deal. You call the DNR." So at some point, we need some support out there as well, and we need to work together and understand what this is going to look like for us, because I am very concerned with the security and the safety of us as homeowners back there. And what happens at night when you've rented out these cabins? Do you do background checks on these people? What happens? They're back there with us. You know, we all kind of know each other and how we operate, and we're good neighbors to one another. But who are these people coming in and renting these cabins overnight? Are you going to have overnight security out there? If we were to call St. Croix County Sheriff and say we have a problem, are they going to say, "Call the parks, this isn't our deal," like they've been saying about hunting? So at some point, we need to understand what the process is. And safety is really, really important to me. It really is. And safety of my 3 and 5-year-old grandchildren that live next door. You know, at some point, we all should feel safe in our community. So I don't know what camping looks like and overnight camping looks like, and if you're doing background checks on these people, or what as you allow them to come in and rent cabins back by us. I mean, the world has changed dramatically. So a cabin out in the country, what does that look like to somebody who's trying to hide or somebody who's trying to do something, you know? It brings grave concern. So anyway, I just think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of communication, and we need to feel safe back there as homeowners, because we're all good citizens. We pay our taxes, we help each other out, we're good people in the community, and I feel we need the respect as well, as you're going to come in with this park plan that's going to open it up to everybody. And I have also some concern about mail and what that's going to look like. We need locked mailboxes. If our mailboxes are going to be moved to a county park gate, I get a lot of important business mail. I want it locked, and I'm sure my neighbors do as well. So there's a lot of things that need to, as our lifestyle's being disrupted, there's a lot of communication, and I think we need to be able to work hand in hand as neighbors, a little better than what happened when you took over the park and opened it to hunting. We got a knock on the door the night before they were going to open it up and said, here you go, tomorrow they open it up. And it hit Facebook, and Mr. Nordstrand put it up on Facebook, and the next day was a free-for-all out there, and it's continued to be a free-for-all. So, you know, I'm not a gun person, so people out there with guns, as I come home and at night and it's pitch black and they're still out there with guns, and I have to drive through the field to get around them loading a deer into the back end of their station wagon, it's like, come on. So I just think we need to, there's more conversation that needs to be happen here. And if the park progresses the way hunting did, it really wasn't fair to any of us, the way that happened. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Very good.
Hello, I am Bonnie Kermay. We live in the North Property 221 River Heights Trail. I fully agree with everyone that has already spoken about Eckerd Blufflands Park. All of the concerns we also have. And we as well have also had many problems down on the beach already. We have had people trespassing. We have went down there, they have been on our dock, using it, ramming it, playing on it, using our beach. Our beach is posted, no trespassing. Our dock is posted, no trespassing. And we have had lots of issues down there already. Trash left all over the place. We go around and pick up trash continually all year after people. And these are concerns as well. It's not only up above, but below. And I'm also concerned you're not going to have a lifeguard or anybody down there. These people are not going to wade. They are going to swim. And they are going to use whatever they want. So I'm very concerned about that as well. And we do have very valuable property down there that we are very concerned about people vandalizing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Mitch Lorenella. I live on 1089 Old Highway 35 in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I just share a few of my concerns here. I've used the land a little bit since I moved out here not too long ago. And I guess my concern is this. Though I'm definitely not against it by any means, I'd say I'm right in the middle. I feel almost like we're losing the land. It seems like it's being just a bit overdeveloped for the size of it. I understand the invasive species. Believe me, I've removed a lot of buckthorn. It's a huge problem. So I'd like to see get that stuff getting under control. But I feel like it's just a bit overdeveloped right now in the current plan with all the camping and all the overnightage. So that would be my concern. Trespassing, again, I like to see a better plan, to keep people from using the private road and then just entering the park. It seems like that would be pretty quick for something like that to begin. People park on that road, as others have said, all night long. It's almost like a highway. I work from home. People are 24/7 going down that road. So I don't think it would be long for somebody to figure that out pretty quick, that you can just enter the park that way. I have had trespassing on my land. Thankfully, it hasn't been much of a concern. They've left after I approached them. But it just seems like there's some issues I'd like further clarity on, and maybe more looking a little deeper into how much you really want to develop the land, because it does feel like we're almost losing it at this level of development. So that's mine.
Thank you. Next speaker. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to speak? One more time, if anyone else would like to speak, now's the time. I deeply appreciate you coming and giving your comments. If no one else would like to speak, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, we have one more thing Ellen would like to share during public comment.
Yep, so on page 26 of the plan, there is a paragraph regarding South Oaks campsite, and based on discussion with our legal counsel, we would like to edit it. We've got about 4 words we're going to change. Edit to read as follows. Currently, the southern 1.9 acres of the South Oaks campsites may be limited to single-family residential use through Starwood plat covenants and restrictions. If necessary, the county will pursue options to remove restrictions which were placed on the property after the county negotiated the purchase and shortly before closing on the property. So that would be the edit, and it just clarifies it based on recommendation from our legal counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will close the public hearing at this point, and we'll move on to business item number 3, resolution to adopt amended Syncroy County Ordinance. Do we have a motion?
So move.
This is a recommendation to the county board to adopt. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Very good. And by way of discussion, we can turn to John with questions or discuss among ourselves. What do we have? Who wants to go first? Scott?
Just wondering about amending the motion just to make sure that we include the things that Ellen brought up.
I have it in my, we'll submit that to Julie as an amendment. We just amend the motion with this, and she can enter it as the amendment because it's very specific language. So we can enter it, and Scott Connor makes the amendment, and I'll make the second to the amendment.
Question? Could you read that again? It's hard to hear what.
Very good.
What the changes were. Could you do that again?
Ellen will read the amendment.
It was on page 26 of the master plan, section on South Oaks campsites. Currently, the southerly 1.98 acres of the South Oaks campsites may be, that's 2 new words, limited to single-family residential use through Starwood plat covenants and restrictions. If necessary, 2 new words, the county will pursue, different word, options to remove restrictions which were placed on the property after the county negotiated the purchase and shortly before closing on the property.
That has to do with the covenants of Starwood?
It's a change to the master plan wording.
Very good. So we have a motion and a second on the amendment. Any discussion? Judy?
Yeah, this amendment is not set in stone. It's adaptable to my knowledge, correct? Yeah, it can be changed or altered because no matter what kind of plan we would ever come up with, there's no way any plan can address everybody's concerns. But this is a first step in regards to what we're going to do. But to my knowledge, this is a guideline for what we want to do. It's not saying that that is exactly what we're going to do, but it's a guideline. It's a start. And hopefully people are going to work together. And it sounds like there's been a lot of problems already, even before the parks have been developed. So hopefully we can work and help everybody out, and it will be there's going to be some minuses to people no matter what we do, because that's just life. but hopefully there'll be more pluses than minuses, and we can get something done that will be of benefit to St. Croix County and a benefit to a lot of other people also.
No, I was just going to reiterate Judy's comments that, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of problems out there already. That's probably because there is no enforcement, because we don't really per se have a park. We don't have a person there to manage it. So it would be a free-for-all. I can imagine that. So hopefully, as we develop those problems, we'll have to work with these people and get these issues resolved. But it's just like Judy said, it's a plan. It isn't exact, but we need to move forward and develop something here. I mean, it's no good just sitting there the way it is, because we've already got problems. So.
I would say, as an individual supervisor, that the way that hunting was introduced, and I'll say this to the residents of Gibbons and others, but the way that hunting was introduced several years ago, I personally regret that deeply, and I'm sorry. I've said that personally, but I'd like to say that in public. So, anybody else? Like to take a vote on this? Oh, Scott? I'm sorry, Scott.
Well, just one of the things on this, I mean, after listening to a lot of the comments tonight, there are concerns that, that we'll need to address in the process. But as part of the process continues, we're still at a pretty high level. We're not down focusing on the details yet that we have to be at to make this come in. So we just want to make sure that we keep communication with the residents that live out there, and that as we move forward, they're involved and we address some of the concerns that they have. I think that the things that I heard don't sound to be anything that are over the top or anything else for being the residents that are there. There are things that we do need to at least consider. But at this point, we're not down to the specifics of the project enough yet to address all of these things, although those things are going to be developed, and we need to keep that in mind.
Let's put a bookmark there. That's an excellent comment, and I'm gonna piggyback on that after we get done voting on the amendment, because that's the next step. Because we kind of lost our way there for a second. Judy.
John, did you have anything you wanted to say? You look like you did.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that it is correct, we're just in the planning stage, but keep in mind it's just that.
Let's
There's
put
also
a bookmark there, because I want
yes.
to piggyback on
Yes.
that after we vote on the amendment. So we have an amendment moved and seconded, which is really just clarifying the language. We're cleaning up a little bit of fuzzy language that our corporation counsel had recommended we do before we can move on to the main motion. Any further conversation on this amendment? Judy?
Okay, so what I
Further conversation
said
on the
was
amendment.
just about what Ellen said. That was not my intent.
Right, what you said seemed to be about the main motion.
Right,
and then we
and that
all-
included what Ellen added.
Right.
Well, I can amend that to say, I would like to,
And what you were talking about seemed to be about this amendment, that everything in the document is...
can it be in one, or do we have to have it
No,
be two?
go ahead, say what you're going to say.
Well, I would like, I won't get it right, but I would like to propose approving the amendment with the additions of Ellen's comments. I would like to approve the proposal.
Ellen's comment was the amendment.
I think, Judy, there's two motions. We're
Yes,
amending
and
the
that's what
motion.
I'm totally confused at, because, so
So I think
Where
if
are
you-
we, Dan?
All right.
Dan was trying to get.
Let me,
Motion to approve the plan.
Yeah, that's what
And
I
this-
did.
But then this came in after, so now we actually just need to include that in the.
right, and it has been,
motion.
it has been moved, Scott moved it, I seconded it, and,
Oh,
and we're about to vote on
The
the amendment.
amendment.
Right, and we took the unusual step of having it read for us by staff. So, all in favor for the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Good. All right, the main motion, which is to recommend to the county board approval of the master plan, is now on the table for discussion. Now, we put a bookmark where Scott was, and John was about to comment on that.
So just to clarify for the committee and those in attendance, this is really a sequential type of process. So tonight we're discussing the broader master plan, but the next step and probably the biggest step would be the funding discussion, if and when that takes place. Once the funding is in place, then we have the mechanism to get into the design funds, which would have us look at more details about specific signage. Yeah, the master plan shows some general layouts, but we know there's some more work that needs to go into that. So when we get the funding, we get into the design stage, which gets us into other issues like the entitlements, working on the right-of-way vacation with St. Joe. The hike-in camping, we need permits from DATCAP to do that. So, I mean, there are a number of processes that have to fall into place. So this is step one of 4 or 5 to come, just so you're aware of that.
Any other comments? Mr. Hesseling?
John, as I understand it, I'll try and put it in layman's terms, what floats to me anyway. When you purchased the property, you were from a satellite level looking down, hoping that this is something that you could do. You're now dropped down to the jet at 30,000 feet, but that's still a very broad brush that you're painting it with. Before you can do any more, you have to pass this, and then you'll be at about a 15,000 level. But you're still looking at what could be, not is what is going to be, but what could be.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think everything I was thinking has been covered.
Thanks, Sean. I'd like to make an opinion, just it's almost a cautionary thing. I'd very much like to see the voices from our neighbors to be included in this process at every step, as they have been. And I know that Ellen and John will continue to keep that going, but I'd also encourage my colleagues. I may or may not get reelected in a couple of months, and whoever's sitting in these chairs would be well advised to continue to have developed relationship with the neighbors of this park and to pay close attention to what they want. And that would be my advice to whoever comes into this room as an elected person. So that's what I have to say. Is there any further comment before I call for a vote? Very good. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Judy?
Yeah, I would like to make another amendment that, motion. I would like to make a motion to put forward to the county board a $12 million bond to pay for this.
It's not
I mean,
on the agenda, though. You can't make a
It's
motion.
part,
It's not, it would be a separate agenda item, and I apologize, but we'll have to ask for that during requests for agenda items, and then we would put it forward that way.
even though it's part of the amendment?
It's too late. We passed the big enchilada.
I didn't realize that I would, yeah, but that was not part of the,
Even
okay.
even then, it would have had to be a completely separate agenda item. I apologize, Judy. At this moment, I'm going to call for about a 4.5 to 5-minute break, and everybody go ahead and relax. All right, thank you. We're back in session. We're going to take a hard look at, is Rep. Boudreau here?
Yep.
We're going to take a hard look at business item number 4, County Floodplain Ordinance Rewrite and Next Steps. And I've been looking forward to this all night.
I bet you have. I'm glad to be here. All right, so we brought this to you many months ago, and we have completed our initial draft, sent it to the Wisconsin DNR for approval, and tonight want to bring you up to date on the revised floodplain ordinance, what we're going to call Chapter 18. We'll start out here with initially some floodplain information statistics. We have, it's a little bit large here. No? Okay. So we have approximately 2,300 acres of floodplain in the unincorporated rural towns of the county, some 800 buildings or 590 parcels. When we intersect those buildings from our aerial photography, our LiDAR, some $135 million of assessed value. And then finally, floodplain itself consists of two different kinds of floodplain, floodway and flood fringe. The floodway is the actual channel and banks that make up the river. They normally handle most of the flood, and then when it goes over the banks of the channel, that gets into the flood fringe. Uses in the flood fringe are limited and require flood proofing and flood insurance. The floodway, where the main flood occurs, uses there are non-structural. So that kind of gives you that beginning definition. Some of the reasons we're doing this, our objectives, we want to repeal Chapter 17.40 floodplain and create a standalone Chapter 18. It'll have its own enforcement, own definitions, same as what we did with the shoreland zoning about a year and a half ago. And we also want to bring our floodplain ordinance up to date with statutory DNR changes. And there's a new model ordinance that the DNR put out this spring of 2021, so we're going to meet that model. We want to help our staff improve consistency and administration for floodplain property owners, and then again format consistency. The previous Chapter 17.4 is not in the same format as our Chapter 15 and Chapter 16. Here's a summary of the major changes, and I'm going to go through each one of these individually as we get further into the presentation. But the order of the items presented in our current ordinance compared to the DNR model in our Chapter 18 proposal are different. We've different standards for public and private campgrounds where they're located. Hydraulic standards, and we'll see that in a minute, what that means. We've clarified those with DNR. Then some standards in the development in the flood fringe, definitions of non-conforming structures, modifications, and alterations, what those things mean, because modifications and alterations are important when figuring out if a structure has been improved more than 50% of its value. Then we also have some interesting new things about variances, a large section about hydraulic and hydrologic studies to analyze development has been added, and an administration section for a standalone ordinance. Sent this to the DNR for their review. They had 4 comments. One of them was the hydraulic standards. We, in our current ordinance 17.4, talk about equaling or exceeding 0.01 feet, 1/100 of a foot. We removed that to match the model language. We added, when floodplain variance is granted, the Board of Adjustment shall notify the applicant in writing that it may increase risk to life and property, and flood insurance premiums could increase up to $25 per $100 of coverage. We had language like that in there, but we didn't have the specifics of the dollar amount, and that's actually within the FEMA language, so we needed to match that. We added some information about the zoning administrator or the planning agency, which would be this committee and then the Board of Adjustment, and then we had to revise the penalty amount to match the model language. And we'll look at all of those a little more. As we go through the presentation, on the left side, we have Chapter 17, and on the right side is Chapter 18. We'll try to do those comparisons. Because the ordinance is completely recreated, it's very difficult to go through and do the replacement and cross-out comparisons, so we've chosen it to do it this way. And then when we made changes to meet the DNR comments, we've highlighted those in yellow. Here's example 17.4, and then our new 18.135, the table of contents and the establishment of districts is in a different order. Over here, our previous ordinance, we had the general floodplain first, the floodway, and then the flood fringe was last. In the model ordinance, and now in our new 18, we go from floodway, flood fringe, and general. It seems like a small thing, but Polk County does it according to the model, Dunn County does it according to the model, Pierce County does it according to the model. We're matching according to the model, and that helps the DNR when they help us enforce, and it also helps any of the surveyors or engineers that might be working in adjacent counties. Public and private campgrounds, the standards for those in current 17 were written out in the floodway district standards, and then that was carried over into the flood fringe. According to the model, those are in the general standards, so we place those in the general standards. The hydraulic standards that I talked about, the existing ordinance talks about increasing regional flood height, which equals or exceeds 0.10 foot. You cannot do that. No floodplain development shall obstruct flow, which does that. And the model ordinance is causing any increase. So causing any increase, so we scratched out 0.01, any increase is the new language. Other standards for development, this is in the flood fringe. One of the things that in our current 17.4, we allowed other floodproofing measures may be approved if the elevations of existing streets or sewer lines make compliance impractical and the Board of Adjustment grants a variance. That language does not exist in the DNR model, therefore we don't not have it in our new Chapter 18. That language would be considered, I guess, more permissive, and we can't be more permissive than the model. We could be more restrictive, but not more permissive. So that's why I've taken that out. Oh, and I should say that these blue underlines here, the reason they're blue underlined, they are links actually out to our ordinance. So there's nothing newer to be recognized there. It's just a link out. Standards for development in the flood fringe accessory structures. Again, we had some language in 17.4 where we had an accessory structure was not connected to the principal structure and which was less than 600 square feet, valued at less than 10,000, may be constructed with its lowest floor no more than 2 feet below the regional flood elevation. That language does not exist in the model, so we've taken it out in the new ordinance. Non-conforming uses and structures, so there's a large section about non-conforming uses. The current Chapter 17.4 does not include definitions or descriptions of what modification and addition are. We had to add those according to the model. So there's quite a bit of words here. The words modification and addition include, but are not limited to, any alteration, addition, modification, structural repair, rebuilding, or replacement of any such existing use structure. Maintenance is not considered a modification. This includes painting, decorating, paneling, and other non-structural components, and the maintenance, repair, or replacement of existing private sewage or water supply systems. So those are important definitions because they have to do with costs, and whenever any alteration or modification is done to a non-conforming use, if it goes above 50% of the assessed value, then it becomes the property has to be made completely conforming on fill. So those definitions are important to that. And we'll see that on the next slide here. So non-conforming uses and structures, added a section about maintenance so that no maintenance on a per event basis to any non-conforming structure or any structure with a non-conforming use.
Brett, what's that?
Yes.
Judy, you had something?
Okay, yeah, right where we're at. Maybe oops, thank you. It says, the very last sentence, any costs associated with the repair of a damaged structure are not considered maintenance. What if you have a hailstorm and you're fixing it? That is maintenance because you have to do it, but
that's a damaged structure, so comes under a different category.
okay.
Yep. Yep, any costs associated with the repair of a damaged structure are not considered maintenance.
Well, why would you repair something if it's not damaged?
Well, the maintenance is defined here: painting, decorating, paneling, things like that.
Yeah, but in the line above, you have, it says repair or replacement.
Okay.
Is that just sewage and water supply systems and nothing else?
Those are other structural repairs, like if you rebuilding or replacement of any existing structure. So that would come in siding or roofing that's not damaged.
Sounds quite convoluted.
Well, that's it exactly. This is the language is directly out of the model. I've included the model in the packet if you we can take a look at that. But yeah, I understand completely. So we've added this section about maintenance. So moving on, we had in our existing chapter 17.4 variances for non-conforming structures in the flood fringe.
Brett, we have one more
Yes, sir.
question.
Yes. Scott.
Brett, sorry to interrupt you here, but with that 50% deal right now, there's going to be a lot of cases where somebody's doing work, and with where the numbers are in today's dollar values when you're doing this work, you're going to find that it's really easy to get over 50% of the cost of the house. Just doing minor, like I'm going to redo my kitchen and my bathroom, it's going to be more than 50% of the cost of the house today.
Mm-hmm.
So are they saying, no, you can't do that now?
That's what that rule of 50% has always been there for a long time. But yeah.
So how are we going to work this? So we got to go to the assessor?
You would have to bring it up to conforming. But yeah, you would have to probably go to the assessor and say, hey, I need to have my house assessed to raise my value.
You need to do the bathroom this year and the kitchen next
year. Yeah, it's going to be.
And one of the things that we were talking about is making sure that we have really close cooperation with the towns, because the towns building permits, because there could be some of this going on that we don't even know about that's in the flood fringe.
And one last one, as we're going through this too, basically as I'm looking at the revisions to this whole thing, basically what we're doing now is that, and it may be been that way for a while, but we are going to eliminate that we can't consider any power dams or anything like that into the future. This just says, nope, we're never going to let that happen again.
I guess I hadn't looked at any of that. I don't believe this goes that far. This is floodplain development for residential and commercial structures. I think that type of development would be a different category.
Okay.
You're talking about a utility doing something?
Correct.
And utilities do tend to have a separate law in Wisconsin, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay. That's good. Not that they need more authority, but I mean, I'm just saying, you know, trying to.
I would point out there's going to be a public hearing on this next month, probably, so that we'll have plenty of time for comments. So if you have questions you want to refine over the course of the next few weeks, you might scribble those down.
Yeah.
So variances for non-conforming structures in the flood fringe. We did allow in one addition to an existing room in a non-conforming building or a building with a non-conforming use. That was removed as well because that did not fit within the DNR model, and it would be more, I guess, liberal than what would be allowed. So that has been removed. This is a major an addition, this hydraulic and hydrologic studies to analyze development. It's an extensive section of new code detailing those hydraulic studies, and I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm going to open this in a new window. And that section begins right here, hydraulic and hydrologic studies to analyze development. They shall be conducted under the direct supervision of a professional engineer registered in the state. All studies shall be reviewed and approved by the department, meaning the DNR. So then it goes on and talks about the various flood zones, and then it talks about the Zone AE floodplain, hydrology and hydraulic models, various models that are to be used, various mapping things. So I think this is going to be somewhat of a more detailed change than what we previously had. I believe some of this work is currently required, but not to this level and not as well defined.
Sorry, is it okay? One of the things, well, we had for instance on that in the town of Star Prairie about 12 years ago in Hidden Ponds. Hidden Ponds development had closed depressions that were actually ponds that were developed, and the ponds on some of the siding for the homes, they were at an elevation of almost 8 feet higher than what the home site and only 50 feet away from it. And so you had a tremendous amount of hydraulic pressure that was coming. They dig a basement, turns into a swimming pool.
Sure.
So those are the types of things. Is that part of what this is going to address?
This is going to be for those flooding situations. I'm not sure if Hidden Ponds maybe is even in floodplain. So I think that's a different issue there as far as setbacks from surface water or wetlands or hydric soils, and then just due to the level of precipitation that we've had. Same thing, coming back to the whole Twin Lakes situation, none of that is actually floodplain. And variances on lots less than 1/2 acre has been removed, 17.4. We had stipulation here, variances can only be granted for lots that are less than 1/2 acre and are contiguous to existing structures. We removed that. However, this is a very interesting one because if you go to FEMA instructions, they still talk about variances can only be granted for lots that are less than 1/2 acre. Variances can be granted for lots that are greater than 1/2 acre. It's a tool that can be used for all of those lots, but This should be one of the very strict, I guess, criteria that would be looked at. You have to have quite a bit of good and sufficient cause for a variance that's greater than, for a lot that's greater than a half acre. But we remove that to meet the model by the DNR's advice. These were some of the other changes from the DNR here that they had us make. Expiration of permits or variances, this is in the administration section. We currently have shall commence within 1 year from the date of approval. DNR says shall expire no more than 100 days after issuance. You can get a 180-day extension. And then if the permitted work has not started within 100 days, 180 days, the development must comply with any new regulations, including any revisions to the flood insurance rate map or the flood insurance studies. When a floodplain variance is granted, we must notify the applicant in writing that it may increase risks to life and property, and flood insurance premiums could increase up to $25 per $100 of coverage. We did not have that in our existing Chapter 17, and when I first sent 18 to the DNR, I left it out because that seemed like, how do we know that detail? Maybe it's more than that. But it's within FEMA, and we were required to have that in there. Another administration, when it came to enforcement, we had a forfeiture of not less than 100 nor more than 500. We needed to change that to not more than $50 according to a statute for floodplain. So I guess with that, questions, and then the next steps. So the next steps we would anticipate have, oh, sorry.
Just making sure I understand right. It used to be a forfeiture of not less than 100 and not more than 500. So it could be between 100 and 500. And now the maximum would be 50. Okay.
Can you have multiple violations then? So if somebody's really got several little things wrong out there, you could have 50, 50, 50, 50?
Well, I'm not sure. This is the floodplain violation, so there could be multiple violations in other ordinances, where then we could go back to this because this is the level that we have in our other ordinances. Next steps, we would anticipate having a public hearing in front of this committee on February 17th. With hopefully county board action on March 1st. After that would occur, we would send a certified copy of the ordinance to the DNR for their final review, and then we would get that back with approval, and certified copy to FEMA, and then our Chapter 18 floodplain ordinance would take effect.
Scott, go ahead.
I guess the one other question I have on this is there's quite a bit more restrictions that have been placed in the new, how this ordinance is structured now. Is FEMA or the Wisconsin DNR going to participate in helping with the costs to enforce, or is this all borne 100% on the county?
I don't know if the costs to enforce will be any greater really, because it's still the same mapped amount of floodplain. That hasn't changed. There are some more requirements as far as the study goes, and that would be borne by the applicant and then sent on to the DNR for their review, required to send to them. We still would send all of the various plans to the DNR.
Any other questions? Or did we run through them? Excellent. Thank you very much, Brett. It's a lot of work. Appreciate it. Next up, we all came to hear the financial report.
I just couldn't wait.
Turn that off before we burn the bulb out again on it. All right, there is a financial report in the packet after all of Brett's stuff. So just a couple of highlights for you, point out the good, the bad, and the other good. Is Register of Deeds, if we look at their fees, they collected $545,000 more than we had budgeted for. So they really have the corner on the recording of deeds market. The recycling department, nothing much there other than the report total there in the black at the end. Hazardous waste, we ended that one a little bit in the red, about $7,700 in the red, but we've talked about that, about the collection costs that we have there. Parks, another one of the good. So we have $110,000 over what we had budgeted, and just $5,000 under last year, and we thought last year was an anomaly, but now it's turning into a trend. So overall, that parks budget, they ended $198,000 in the black right now, pre-audited numbers. Not a lot on the other ones. Fairgrounds, that's always a zero. UW Extension, they are a little bit into the red. We'll have to have a chat with Kristen there. Resource Land and Conservation, they're $387,000 in the red. I think they're missing a revenue yet that hasn't come in maybe. So that should definitely, yeah. Planning and Records, they're in the black at the end. Zoning, they're in the black by quite a bit at the end here. Economic Development, they're in the red. These are banking fees. So when we did the loans, the business loans, that program in 2000, there are still some banking fees that are sitting out there, which we haven't really anticipated. Now that's what's causing that. And that is the end of the financial report. Are there any questions that you may have?
All right, announcements, correspondence. Ellen?
I don't have any, actually.
Wow.
We don't have anything coming up that I can think of.
All right, no announcements or correspondence. Anybody else? I don't have anything either. Requests for future agenda items. Judy?
I would like to put the bond issue.
All right, we'd like to talk about bonding for Eckerd Blufflands Park. Any other requests for future agenda items?
I would not like to limit it to just Eckerd. I mean, I would like it for all parks, i.e. Glen Hills, for the camper cabins, whatnot. So
very good.
I just want to make sure that we can discuss
bonding
the whole
for
parks. Yes.
Got it.
Funding for parks.
Funding for parks.
Okay.
Any other agenda item requests?
Floodplain public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Floodplain public hearing. Definitely want that. The date of the next meeting is Thursday, February 17, 2022. Be there or be square. I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.